Hello and welcome to the live podcast, Win More on Purpose. Today we have Robb Gilbert with us on Dream Clients, how to attract clients that you love to work with. Really excited about this conversation. For those of you who are not familiar, the agenda for today is going to be a conversation between me and Robb. We're all here learning together. Write down those questions. There will be a Q&A at the end. And for everyone who's just coming in as we are live, you can put into the chat, what are you focused on in your business? Where is it that you're coming from? Or even just what it is that you do. That'll definitely play a role in us being able to help you to grow as we go through this process. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Yaacov Steinberg. I am a sales coach. When I first went into full-time coaching about 4.5+ years ago now, I noticed that people were able to build 6-7 figure businesses on their own. They're good at what they do. They're passionate. Some point along the way, they learned how to speak to people, and they'd hit this glass ceiling, whether it was because they were making it up as they went along or because they didn't want to be that stereotypical used car salesperson, sleazy, pushy, trying to get people to buy things they maybe didn't even need. And that's where I came into the picture. Mindset, technique, skills, really helping people to have that confidence and clarity and having an understanding of who they needed to speak to, where they were going to find them, what to say to them, and how to say it. I've had the pleasure of helping quite a number of pretty well-known people on the platform of LinkedIn, whether it's Chaya Fishman, Hudi Bloch, Hudi Greenberger, or even Eli Bosch. And thank God, a lot of the people that have been able to work with me at the 6-7 figure level have been able to grow by even 50% in the first 60 days of working with me. At the $100,000 level, give or take, even 150% in the first 60 to 90 days. And at the solopreneur just starting out, even just 4K a month, even 240% in the first 45 days. Robb, really excited to have you here today. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and then let's just get into it.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. I am the founder of Growth Habit, and I help purpose-driven coaches and consultants doing meaningful work grow their impact and grow their business. It's not at all what I'd set out to do. If we would have met years ago, I was a leadership coach by day as part of my people and culture role. It was by far what I love doing the most, coaching the CEO and the leadership team. And I wanted to do more of it. So I launched and did my own coaching business. I was doing habits coaching. I was working with entrepreneurs and really enjoying the ride. And other coaches and consultants started asking me questions. How the heck had I done it? How did I go from a full-time job to full roster clients? How was I getting clients overseas? And I just started having conversations with people where I'd let them pick my brain. I'd give them some input on some messaging or some things I thought they could do differently. And then one week, 3 people booked those calls. 2 of them asked at the end, how do I have another one of these conversations? So I made the switch to what I'm doing now and really found that the people that are doing this work from the heart, that really care about the impact, are doing it because they've been through a lot on their own and they've come on the other side of it and they really want to make the world a better place and they care about impact. They sometimes hesitate from things that feel like marketing or things that feel like sales. So much so that if you look at my content, my marketing, my messaging, I'll pretty much always say getting the message out, getting your message out, because that's what it really is about, and enrollment. It's not about sales. It's not trying to, like you talk about, it's not pushy. It's how do you invite people? How do you enroll people? So I help those people have bigger businesses and have more impact.
Absolutely amazing. Yeah, I'm really excited. The two of us have had a lot of, conversation off camera, and there have been so many things the two of us connect with. And I think this concept of dream clients, right? You use the term dream clients instead of, a lot of people use the term, even myself, as ICP, ideal client profile, or avatar. Why specifically dream clients? Why specifically that terminology?
Because words matter. Like, words carry a lot of meaning and words carry a lot of punch. And sometimes it's just because it's been used by a certain person or a certain group for a period of time that it starts kind of picking up a stigma. But also, it can kind of be degrading if we're just reducing people to an avatar, if we're just reducing people to an ideal client profile. It's like we're turning them into a number instead of an individual human. So for me, that's important. And then when I think about, if you're going to do work that you don't enjoy doing, or do work that with people you don't love to spend time with, then at some point I'm just going to probably make an argument that maybe you should just go get a job. So if you're going to be an entrepreneur and have a business that you love and really want to enjoy your days and look forward to the things in your calendar, then dream clients. Like that's, to me, it's a dream client, someone you absolutely love spending time with, love supporting, know you can provide immense value to. That's why dream clients instead of say Avatar or ICP.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's a very powerful point you make, and we talk about this in sales all the time in the sense that intentionality is really important when it comes to not just how you're saying things, but what you're saying, and the way that we speak about our clients, the way that we speak to ourselves and about other people, really truly affect us on the inside and how we go about our everyday lives. So I think that's, it's a very valid point in the sense that the way that you talk about people that you want to work with will really greatly impact the type of people that you're going to attract. And I think that that's a very interesting, piece. What do you feel is what led you to that realization that dream clients, as opposed to, those other, Avatar or ICP, what led you to that place? Like, how did you come up to that?
Because I don't think I followed a traditional marketing or like, this is what you're taught in business school approach. I started my first business as a teenager. I struggled to break into a really competitive market. I had to do unique and guerrilla style things to try and get my message out and get in front of the right people. And I learned things kind of in the trenches, building different businesses. So then for me, it was always about, well, what, like you said, intentionality. Like, what is my intention here? How do I want to show up? What energy do I want to be bringing? What kind of people do I want to be attracting? So then it was about thinking through that lens versus in business school, it's taught this way. In a marketing course, it's taught that way. And I think that's been the biggest difference for me.
Yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense because I think that those of us, I mean, I myself, I also didn't go through that route. I went through a completely different road to get to where I am today, where I started off in teaching and then it went into sales, knowing that I had natural sales affinity from when I was a kid. And then I was pushed into the full-time coaching. Like, it wasn't even something that I planned to do, but it was because of, in the sales world, as a salesperson, I realized that intention played such a big role in how people interacted with you and the way that you were able to connect with them at a whole different level when you really truly cared about the other person, which comes naturally to me as a human being. And that's the biggest piece, is so many people have like walked away from this concept of being a human being in business, in sales, in all of these pieces. And like, I was speaking to someone today as an easy example, one of my clients, and we were talking about follow-up, different ways of following up with people. And I said, send a GIF. And she was like, but it's so unprofessional. I said, but is it though? Because at the end of the day, that guy who's wearing his tie and he's like all stuck up like this, at the end of the day, he's going to take off that tie and go, let's go. Like, he's a normal human being, he or she, and they just want to be treated as such. So when we go and we send them something that says, I see you, that plays a very big role in how they're going to react to that. So one, you're doing something different. Two, you are treating them the way they want to be treated. They're not a corporate thing. That's not who they are. They're a human being. They happen to play that role when they go to work. I would bet that when they go home, they don't talk the same way. I mean, I hope not. Young man, right? And then they go through this whole, soliloquy, just like they would with one of their, workers to their 5-year-old kid. I highly doubt that's happening. At least I hope it's not. But like, that's just what they want. They want you to break through the mold. They don't want to hear that, stereotypical sales song that everyone else is singing. They want it to be different, right?
Yeah, totally. You're bringing up a really great point. And it's funny because I'll talk to people all the time. One of the wonders of the internet is that you and I became connected through a platform like LinkedIn. I've had clients in 16 different countries. I've got people in a community that are all over the world. It's amazing. The downside sometimes is that people can forget that behind every little circle, there's an actual human there. There's a person who's trying to be a good parent. There's a person who is trying to build a business. There's a person who had a difficult relationship with a parent. There's a person who has been upset at themselves, has lived through trauma, who's cries sometimes. Like, there is a person there. And the idea of, you said GIF, I have to say GIF, but the idea of sending someone a GIF, it's just like, hey, we don't have to do the corporate nonsense. You're a person, I'm a person. I want to hopefully make you smile and laugh, and maybe that can re-spark the conversation, versus forgetting that behind every circle and every name, there's a human, there's a person.
Right. And the simplest way, I mean, even the way that I explain it to my own clients, LinkedIn is an ongoing networking event. If effectively you're choosing to go over to anybody in the room, strike up a conversation, take it off to a corner called the DMs, someone speaking, on a soapbox in the middle of a group of people, that's their post, you commenting as you leaning it and saying something of value, from right outside the circle, and now you're part of the conversation. It's effectively the exact same thing. So when we remember that and when we're able to tap into it and just be who we are and treat them in a way that we can believe they might want to be treated, we change up the whole game. And they're so much more interested because, like you said, you're inviting them into your world as opposed to trying to pitch them, which is something none of us want to see.
None of us want to see. And I love the way you really, with a beautiful comparison, just put us in an event. You put us at a networking event. You're like, this is the podium, this is the DMs, and it's a really great way to frame it. And the other way I sometimes say it to people too, I said, okay, cool. It's online. There's 1 billion people. It's powerful. Instead of that, imagine it's a downtown quaint street in a cute little town, and your profile page is a little shop. And then next door, there's a coffee shop. And across the street, there's a tailor. And then there's a florist. And imagine the difference if you had this little downtown shop, if you didn't interact with the neighbor, never went to the tailor, never sent any referrals next door, and the BIA had an event, you didn't support it, you didn't celebrate someone's 10-year in business, and you just isolated yourself, how well would your little shop do? Right. And it's the same thing online. And you apply that. It's a community. I'm going to build relationships. I'm going to support others. I'm going to cheer other people on. I'm going to celebrate other people's success. And then it works the exact same way as an actual community.
It really does. And it's fascinating. And I can almost see in the way that you just painted that, like in 10 years from now with AI and everything and the way that things are moving. And we're going to get to AI a little bit later. I can just see this virtual LinkedIn with us walking down a street. And on that street, there's Robb Gilbert over here and Yaacov Steinberg over there. And there's these shops, sales coach, and all these different things. And there's like, marketing in the windows, which is all the posts that we talk about. And I can almost see it in my mind's eye. Delving deep right into the meat of this, what is the key to attracting dream clients, right? You spoke about the fact that we're human beings, that people we're talking to are human beings. So let's give them the respect that they deserve by being called dream clients as opposed to an avatar, which is more of a thing. What's the key to attracting these people then?
The first thing is getting really clear on who the heck you are. What makes you who you are, what excites you, what frustrates you, what gets you up in the morning, what's your deeper purpose, what are things you love to do, what are things you don't like to do, and then own that and know that there's some people who are going to have a similar approach and some people who really won't jive with that. And then being willing to share that as part of what you put out into the world. Because any good coaching, any good teaching training will talk to you about, okay, you have to connect with what they want, with their thoughts, with their feelings, with their big goals, with their fears, with their challenges. Yes, but if there is 100 or 1,000 or 1,000,000 people that are other sales coaches or insert whatever the thing you do, if you want to stand out and then also attract people that you're going to enjoy spending time with, it's highly rooted in you knowing those things. What are your values? What excites you? If you care a lot about family and family is your number one, then let's see that. Let's include that in your stories. Let's include that in the way that you're showing up. The comparison I often make, because they are sometimes quite often opposing ends of the spectrum, is if someone is really big on efficiency and really prioritizes efficiency, they are quite different normally than someone who highly prioritizes creativity. Neither is right or wrong, but they're often kind of on a spectrum in the way that if you were really like, efficiency is so important to me and it means a lot to me and I need people to, you would express yourself differently. You would show different things. You would share different things versus if you care less about efficiency, but it's creativity, then show us your colors, show us your zaniness, show us some of the things you're creating. So that's where it starts.
Yeah, and I think it's a very important and underrated point that you're bringing out. I mean, I even know for myself, I've been on LinkedIn for quite some time now. And when I first came on the platform, I was putting out good quality content even, but I hadn't stepped into who I really was. Whereas today, like even my Calendly link is a great example of this. When someone goes to my Calendly link, first of all, the words that they see right away is, are we meant for each other? With like a little smirking emoji. And then it goes into, this meeting is for the two of us to get to know each other and see if we want to spend the rest of our lives together in coaching matrimony, right? Oh, just kidding. Don't worry. It's to get to know each other, start creating a relationship and just have fun. If that ends up somewhere, blah, blah, blah. But so many people are going to get turned off by that message. And that's exactly the point, because just like you said, I want to push away the people that aren't going to be not just fun for me to work with, but they're not going to appreciate that value, the information that I bring, and all of those different pieces that make me who I am. And if that's going to be the case, then it's just going to be a drag, and it's going to be a drain, and it's not going to be fun like we want to be having every single day, right? The more that you can lean into who you are and enjoy every single day and enjoy the journey, the less you're actually working, and the more you're going to feel alive and living life, even just through the day-to-day interactions of meeting with clients and whatever else it may be. Right? Would you agree?
I would totally agree. And I love that you brought this as an example, because I cheered when I saw your Calendly link. I got excited. I was like, this is the shit. Like, this is where it's at. And
right.
the way I think about it sometimes is, when you look at these meetings in your calendar, when you look at who these people are you excited? Are you looking forward to your days? And if you hide yourself and mask your personality and cut your corners and make yourself small, and I don't want to offend anyone, so that you can try and appease everyone, then it means that then you're also putting a straitjacket on and are forced to all your interactions going forward to hide that. Because if you do have a funny personality and you like making those kinds of jokes, and you maybe have a bit of sarcasm or whatever that is about you, and you hide it publicly, then people either need to find that out through a series of DMs and Zoom conversations, or you have to muzzle it the entire time that you're building a relationship, supporting, working with, delivering for this client. And I don't want to have to wear a straitjacket every day.
Yeah, and it's draining. Like, that's exactly the point. Like, when you live in that space, so then the whole entire day of every day, you're just feeling choked, and nobody respects your expertise in the process, and it feels more like a chore than anything else. And the way that you communicate, and people aren't paying on time, and all of a sudden it's not constructive, and you feel like, I want people that are going to show up and be fired up. Like, let's go, right? I want people that are super excited, not like they need to be hanging on my every word, like I'm some sort of, whatever. But ultimately, we want people that respect not just ourselves, but themselves. And a big part of that, I think, comes down to self-awareness. Like I spoke about this on one of our previous podcasts. The idea that I didn't realize I'm an introvert, and I didn't even realize that and come to terms with it till I was in my 30s. And it came out in that podcast that, the person I was doing it with, does a lot of personality tests for people, and she's a career coach. So, she's very familiar with the space. And she said that it happens to be that a lot of introverts in high school, because of social purposes, become more extroverted. And when they're older and they don't need that anymore, they're willing to step back away from that again and become more introverted again. And I totally saw that in my own life. But it was only a couple of years ago, through deep work and introspection and all of that, that I was able to step into who I really am and be willing to accept that introverted side of me. And there's parts to be gained by the extroverted side, and sometimes I'll slip into that mode, but I know now that I need time to come down from that, right? And it's realizing that when you're playing that role, when you are in who you really are, that's when you shine, and that's when people are attracted to you, and you create that tribe of people that just want to be around you and learn from you.
That people wanting to be around you piece, which is, there's no way to fake it. It's really hard. And then if you manage to fake it for a minute, it's going to be really tough and exhausting to uphold, versus
right.
You talked about doing deep work, you doing the analysis, the reflection, the forgiving, the whatever needs to happen, and then accepting of yourself, and just show up with who you are, knowing who you are. And that is so refreshing. And that's why there's people that don't meet the stereotypical definitions of what is attractive, just have this magnetism about them, even though they don't look like what we were told is supposed to be attractive or sexy. And it's because internally they know who they are, and they're not afraid to show up with who they are. And there's just something so powerful about that, and you want to be around them.
Yeah, and there's that self-confidence that they've stepped into who they are. I think a lot of this comes down to the messaging and the way that we project and the perception we give out into the world. People, I believe, make a lot of mistakes when it comes to this. And I would like to tap into a little bit. What do you feel are some of the big mistakes that you see coaches or consultants or really freelancers or business owners making when it comes to their messaging?
There's a few. And the first one I'm going to bring up is tied to exactly what we were just talking about. And I jokingly call it showing up as flat Fred. And flat Fred is super flat and doesn't say anything that anyone could possibly disagree with, and doesn't share any kind of opinions, and doesn't share anything about what they enjoy or like or don't like. And they're just like, oh, I'm flat and I'm not going to disrupt anything. And it's the complete opposite of what we were just talking about. So that's a really big one. A second one is not having any clarity or specificity around who exactly they serve. And when people start out, it's often like, well, I don't want to leave anyone out. You know, I don't want to scare any potential clients. I really need business. So I'm for everyone. And then it just means that, again, in a sea of a billion people on LinkedIn, you're for no one. No one knows if you're actually specifically for them, and you can't get through. Sometimes this also shows up with the people that I work with that I'll like call highly empathetic or big-hearted or whatever. They don't exclude anyone. So there's maybe not the fear of like, oh, I want to keep myself open to all potential business, but sometimes what leads to that behavior is they are like, well, I don't want to make anyone feel left out. And that's a really big one, because then like the words you choose and the things you use, they can't resonate with any specific person. And then those are the biggest ones. Anything beyond that, it goes to actually on that, it's who you serve and what you help them with. There's an intersection there. And the more specific you're willing to get, especially in a world where there's so many people online, you want to be an expert. You want to be seen as an expert. You actually want to feel, carve out. You're going to be the king or queen of this little thing. Talk about this thing. Oh, I'm ranting a bit and I'll shut up. That's the other big mistake is
keep going.
Continuity around messaging. And I think it's funny for me because there's a client who worked with for 7 months, 8 months, maybe 8.5 months. And she's so damn good at what she's doing. And she's attracting massive opportunities and international clients and just big contracts. And she does leadership coaching. And if you were to pull up her LinkedIn right now and look at her stuff, 98% of all her content is, this is why it's really damn hard to be a manager. Here's how you make it less hard to be a manager. And then infused with some of her personality and her energy. But she hits those buttons over and over and over again. And it can be boring and it can be tiresome to talk about the same things over and over again. So long-winded way is the consistency is another big mistake that I see people make.
Yeah, and I feel like this point about flat Fred and not trying to, push anybody away, it's exactly like you said. When you aren't saying anything that people are going to disagree with and you're just being neutral and PC, are you really saying anything? Right? That's the question we need to be asking ourselves. In reality, you're not, because you're saying such you're trying to stay in such a neutral line that you're not saying anything that you truly believe. And that has so many ripple effects in the sense that someone's going to get into a meeting with you and all of a sudden you do have opinions. And then you'd be like, oh, I thought you didn't have any opinions, right? Or you are, whatever it is, when you don't play that role, it's like almost someone else is running your LinkedIn. And when they show up with you in a meeting, you're someone else completely, and they are so thrown off, they don't even know what to do, right? And they come out of the other end of the meeting, they're like, who was that? Was that Rob? Or like, did someone kidnap Rob and pretend to be Rob? He looked the same, but it didn't seem like Rob, right? Like, and when you step into who you are, right, all of a sudden you're just you. You don't have to put on this mask anymore. And what you say matters in that big way, whereby you don't need to, always be careful about how you're saying things and what you're saying. And look, it doesn't mean that you need to be, telling everything about your family and all your, dirty laundry, but it does mean like, give us a little bit of a taste of who you are, what you care about, and what matters to you.
Yeah, you made a great point. Look, you don't have to air your trauma and talk about the most difficult things you've ever lived through, but also we shouldn't have to get on 2 Zoom calls with you to realize that you really love dogs, kind of hate cats, and have this weird obsession for jazz music from South America that most people don't know about, or whatever it is. Like, just share some bridges for us to connect back to this conversation. We're so grounded in this, like, so human to human, I can connect with you. The amount of people who, because of my music past, or when I did an ultra marathon last year, like anytime I share these little tidbits of who I am, people bring them up in conversation. They're like, yeah, I remember this. I resonated with this.
And it's a way for people to connect to you, right? There are some people that lean into the fact that they were depressed for a long time, or how they dealt with these things, or that they have bad days. And guess what? There are people on the platform who turn to those people and say, thank you. Thank you for being a voice to let me know this is okay, to let me know that this is normal, to let me know that men should talk about their feelings and that real men cry. Right? Because that's the realities of life. When we try to create this wall of, oh no, all men are supposed to be like this and nobody's supposed to have any feelings, and then the world is a very sad place to live in. And I don't think anybody wants to. I mean, I'm sure there are one or two people that might want to live in that world, but I definitely don't want to live in that world. And in your messaging, it's all about letting us know the type of world that you like, that you appreciate, so that when they jump on that meeting with you, they're like, oh, by the way, the reason I came on this meeting was because I saw you made a post about XYZ, like you said, your music background. And I just love the fact that you used to be in a band, and I totally want to hear more about it. And that leads to all of a sudden the things that they could be stepping into by realizing the type of coaching they could get from you.
It creates an opening. It creates a human-to-human connection, and it creates an opening. And in a world where it's highlight reels and everyone pretending that their stuff is perfect and their stuff don't stink and they never. So if you're willing to show some humanity, that yes, whether that is sometimes men cry or and have feelings or whatever that thing is, again, it's another point of magnetism. We talked earlier about what makes you magnetic to people when people are willing to own that. And that's another one of those things. And if there's 1,000, 10,000, and for some of these, I searched like leadership coach. I think the last time I looked, I want to say it was 4 million. Like I got 4 million returns on searching for leadership coach on LinkedIn last month. So how the heck are you going to stand out? And it better be you talking about you like playing the bagpipe and your children is whatever. You're going to gymnast meets every weekend with your kids, or so it's giving me something to connect to.
Right. And it's the story, right? Ultimately, at the end of the day, human beings love a good story, right? At the beginning of this podcast, I gave what I call my context pitch, giving over what it is that I do, how I help people. There's a storyline in there that people see themselves in. Oh, I'm a 6-7 figure entrepreneur. And yeah, I was able to, build this up myself, and I learned how to speak to people. And that piece right there, but then they got stuck. They wanted more or whatever it is. That talks to them, because as human beings, we naturally love to tap into a good story. And when we can see ourselves in someone else's story, we have such a deeper connection with them than just the fact that they, work at whatever corporate company they might work at.
It's funny. My teenage daughter asked me last year, she was sharing that she was following these YouTubers, and they were sharing a lot of tips and actionable tips around video editing and movie making. And she likes this kind of stuff. And one of them had switched their content format and started talking about something else, because they evolved as a person. They got interested in something else. And she was saying how she felt totally disconnected from them. And we talked it through. And then I asked her about some other people that I know she follows who have changed kind of what they're about. And those other people, as part of their story, as part of the way they help the world, as part of how they show up, infused some of them as an individual. So that as they evolved and changed, it wasn't just, I have no connection to Yaacov. If you go from somewhere beyond sales coaching, if this turns into something else, I'm still connected to you. I still know a part of your story. I still know you as a person. There's things that I'm anchored to beyond just you help me be better at sales.
Yeah. And it's so funny, because I think that we've both experienced this. Like when clients come, they're like, oh, but I have 2 different things. How could I be on LinkedIn? Do I need 2 different profiles? I'm like, no, you only need one. Just write that you do this and you do that. Like, right? You just need to figure out, how can I incorporate that in my story? So when I first started my story, I did this. And then at some point, this also happened. So now I do both of these. So if either of these talk to you, we should totally speak. Whatever, like and your content can kind of be like one day like this and one day like that, or, a couple days a week or whatever it is. And yeah, people might be confused the first time they see this style and then they see that style a different day, but then they'll get used to it and they'll be like, oh yeah, he does 2 things or she does 2 things or whatever it is. And that's okay, right? You don't need to fit into a box. And I think that that's the biggest problem that people face, is where the conditioning that we get, which is, I think the big part, comes probably from schooling, and that everyone should be sitting at desks. And, it was meant to create, future, factory workers. And ultimately, at the end of the day, a lot of people aren't meant to be factory workers. We're meant to be entrepreneurs who then potentially have factories, or we just want to have our own little thing that has nothing to do with the factory. But we want to stay far away from the factory. So it doesn't work like that. And none of us want to fit into that box at the end of the day, because every single person on this world is different. It's why each of us have our own fingerprint. No two are the same, because you are unique, and you got to sing your song because no one else ain't going to sing it but you.
I love it. My cheeks are hurting. We're very much aligned there. And I love ranting about the school thing, because it's show up, line up when the bell rings, the foreman, the teacher will tell you when you can go to your workstation, sit quietly at your workstation. You cannot leave unless you get permission until it is the allotted break. The bell will ring. Like, it really is indoctrinating you to just follow orders and follow the herd and just do the thing versus standing out. And not only are you maybe not meant to be a factory worker, we're beyond that. We're even past the information age now, and we're really heading into another age of entrepreneurialism. Like a few hundred years ago, there was way more entrepreneurs. You owned a shop. I had a farm. Someone was the butcher. There was so many more entrepreneurs before the Industrial Revolution. Well, if you haven't been paying attention, guess what? We're very much headed right back into that. And there's going to be a lot more entrepreneurs going forward. So you accepting that you have a fingerprint and that you accept what's different about you and be willing to share that is a big part of how you can succeed in this new era.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, I did well in school. It wasn't like I'm like one of those guys who's like, oh, no, I got all F's in school, and that's why I was meant to be an entrepreneur. And being an entrepreneur is hard for me. It was where God pulled me. He pulled me by the nose and said, do this. And I went, okay, I'll just try not to get in the way. Right? I have a very big part of me that is uncomfortable being in the entrepreneurial space and having to take those calculated risks or risks in general or whatever it is and all the pieces that come along with it. But it's where I'm meant to be. And when I stepped into that, it was different. And I think this goes into, like you mentioned, like where we're heading. And now we're in this, place where a lot more people are stepping into that entrepreneurialism. I think I might have made up that word. I'm not sure. I do that. Apparently last episode, I made up the word intentionality because I couldn't remember that it was intentionality. Yeah. But how does the explosion of easily accessible AI and AI generated content affect all of this? Right? Because a lot of what we're talking about is being you. How does AI now play a role?
I had a catch-up call with a client on Thursday who is doing incredible things. Her business continues to grow. She just signed a $100,000 coaching contract to build and deliver a coaching program that she's super excited about. And one of her secrets to success, one of the reasons she's been able to do that, is she shows up unapologetically as herself online. And when you speak to her on a call, it is the same person. And that means that she does talk about difficulty she went through. She does share her opinions if she doesn't like them. She does invite you in and is outspoken about certain things that mean a lot to her. And there is no way that you would ever look at her stuff and think, oh, this is Chat GPT. So in a world where AI tools can make it easier for you to create content, create more content, flood the feed with more content. Everything that we've been talking about for the last half hour, as far as your willingness to show up as your own individual fingerprint and show some of your personality and talk about some things you like and show what's really important to you and stand for things, is how I jokingly say to my community how we beat the robots.
Well said. And I find it really interesting because there's a lot of people that, myself included even, that have come to learn how to use AI to a certain point. But I think the piece that a lot of people miss is you're supposed to edit it afterwards to make it your own, right? I use, an easy example, and I'm happy to put this, if people want this, I'm happy to, anybody can send me a DM on LinkedIn and I'll share this with you. I use something called Magic Post. For a lot of my content. Why? I'm putting out 3 posts a day on LinkedIn right now. There is no way that I'm going to spend all that time writing about it. But what I do is I know what I want to talk about. I put in the points and it will give me a basic understanding based on that. And then I go in and I put in my own flavor and I make it my own and I spread it out more. And I take out this emoji because it's so AI. Yes, I'm talking about the rocket ship. And there's certain emojis that are just known, like that little one with like the stars or whatever. It's like there's certain ones that just AI puts them everywhere, and you're like, no, I would never use that in that context. I even made fun of it today on one of my posts where I put the rocket ship when I wrote, I know this looks like such AI, but there was no other emoji that fit the bill. And it's like, but that's the reality. You got to go in there. You got to make it you. And you can use these tools, and you can use things like, Opus, or, all these other things to, edit video, and you can learn how to make life easier, because that's essentially the point. It's not like AI is going to take, my job anytime soon, but it's going to be very hard for me to compete with someone who is using AI in the right way if I have no clue how to use it, because they'll be able to move at scale while I'm stuck trading time for money and limited to the amount of people I can impact and help and change their lives. And that's the piece, right? So as long as you're able to put your own flair in it after the fact, I think that's the biggest, differentiator there.
That's the hugest differentiator. And I love that you called out that who's going to beat you is someone who is willing and learning and implementing AI while infusing kind of who they are. And it's that last bit. Yeah, use it to brainstorm, use it to generate ideas, use it to get something 60, 70, 80% there. But then please come in with a little bit editing, come in and make sure that it sounds like you, that it reads like you, that so that the humanity is still there.
Yeah, because ultimately that's what it is. I mean, like, if I were to say, like, is there a difference between how you create, any type of content with someone? It's going to boil down to the message of you and you being you. And I mean, this goes really into my next question, which is like a lot of people, especially like, using LinkedIn as an easy example. So many people are going to be like, yeah, but I can talk to someone in person. When it comes to talking to them online, I don't know how. I don't know how to do it. It's not the same. It's very different. And that's true. It is very different. And there's a difference between sometimes potentially, and I am curious what your thoughts are there. Is there a difference between how you would create messaging to attract your dream clients online versus in person? Right? I think it leads right into that question.
I think the best way is that the closer those things are, like the word authenticity gets thrown around a lot, and I don't necessarily buy into the word as much, and it's less about authenticity, and it's more about alignment. And who you are in private conversations, when your clients are saying this really resonates, when you're talking to someone in person and you see their eyes light up, if we take the words, the energy, the way that you're delivering that message and how much that resembles to what's being shared online, that's what it's about. And it's about creating that alignment there, because some of the best responses I get is when I'm not scripted and I crack a joke and I infuse some humor. Like you're talking about the responses you get to your Calendly, because at this point we've all looked at hundreds, if not thousands of Calendly links before. And to most people, that is a pattern interrupt. I read it and I'm hearing a human voice. I feel like someone's joking with me. I feel like, seriously, like I'm elbowing and we're knee slap. Like that is the best way to actually stand out, is to try and communicate in a similar way as you would in person.
Yeah. And yeah, are there differences? Of course there are, right? Because, and again, this all goes into, people who feel like it's hard for them to put out what they really feel or into words and whatever. And that's where something like, this platform I mentioned before can really help, because as long as you're going in there and making it your own, then it at least still sounds like you. But essentially going back to where we started, it's an online networking event. And the same way that you're going to talk to someone in person will be very similar to the way that you want to talk to them online. It's not going to be the same. Of course not, because you're not there. And therefore there isn't that energy to feed off of, and you're not both in the same space, and you're not both 100%, tuned into each other. And there's a lot of distractions, and it's called direct messaging. You're going to walk away to a meeting. I'm having a conversation with someone since this morning, and literally I keep responding to him in between meetings. Right? And that's just the way direct messaging works. You're not in the person's face, and therefore what's going to happen is there's going to be a difference. It's going to be a different way to keep the conversation moving. And that is a skill that needs to be learned. But ultimately, at its core, at the foundation of it, you are you. And as long as you lean into that, and the words you say and the messaging, and like, I was speaking to Will Aiken on last week's podcast, and he calls me and goes, "Hey, what's up?" Like, he will start a cold call with the words "what's up," because that's who he is. And I said on the podcast, I'm like, if you're never going to use the words "what's up" in conversation, please don't use it on a cold call. If you would, by all means, like, this could work really well, because he's leaning in to who he is. And just like we spoke then and we're speaking now, if someone doesn't like the fact that he used the word "what's up," he doesn't want to work with them anyways, because they're not going to appreciate it. He's going to have all these other lingo that he's going to say, and they're not going to want to be there.
I love it. I intentionally swear in probably at least one post a week, because if you're someone who's very put off by some foul language, then you're not going to like spending time with me. You're not going to enjoy coaching together. You're not going to like the frameworks and things I have all recorded on my platform. It's going to be because I get excited. I'm passionate about this. And sometimes it comes with colorful language. So I intentionally include that. And the thing about DMs, yeah, you're right. Because right now it's interactive. If I say something, I can see whether it lands or not. And we can, like, it's a live back and forth. So
Right.
yes, that's different. But the upside is you've been having this conversation with that one person between meetings all day, but you could also have at the same time 7 other conversations going on.
Exactly.
And those people don't know. And that's the power of the amplification, the leverage that's available with these tools if you're willing to use them and say, okay, yes, it's different than chatting in person at the networking event, but figure out how to have a human-human conversation here, and you can be talking to 7, 10, 23 people at the same time.
Yeah, 100%. And this goes into, I'll ask you a question that comes up that I'm sure a lot of people, that are watching this and that are even, thinking about this question themselves. Where should someone start if they're trying to figure out their messaging? Because a lot of people struggle with this.
A lot of people definitely struggle with it. For me, it comes down to figuring out who you're meant to serve first and then building off that. I think that's the right place to start. And then I see things as a Venn diagram as far as who are people that you're highly relevant to based on things you've done, things you've accomplished, either things you've changed, results you've created in your life or helped other people. Okay, who are some of those people? Okay, great. Where is, who are people that need this? Who are people that you can provide value to? So just because you have experience there doesn't mean that you can truly provide necessarily value to those people. So you've got a relevancy. Oh no, I messed it up. The relevancy and the value is the same thing. You're relevant to them. That's why you can provide the value. Sorry. You enjoy the work. You actually enjoy the work, because otherwise you get into you're just doing it for money. So relevant can provide them value. Enjoy the work so it doesn't feel like work, and you love it, which means that when it's tough, because entrepreneurship is tough and there's up downs, that you can stick with it. And then the third one, that they have the means to pay. Because if you don't factor that in, you're going to create a hobby. You might only want a hobby. Good. I'm not judging you. But if you only have relevancy to them and you only enjoy it, then it's not a business. So anyway, factor in the center of those 3. Once you figured that out, then you want to get obsessed with to figure out the alignment between you and those people. In what way are you connected? What do you have in common when it comes to understanding their challenges, the things that keep them up at night, the goals they have? Why are those goals important? And go below that. They don't want a promotion. No, they want to know that they made enough money so they can take care of their family, so they know they can put their kids through college, so that there's a legacy when they get old, blah, blah, like you double, triple click on these things, you get to the deeper why, and it's often tied to a sense of meaning, of purpose, of legacy, of providing for people we love, and get into that. I could keep going, but I don't want to talk for 12 minutes. But it starts with finding that intersection and speaking to those people and finding the alignment to those people.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself, because once you know the who, now you can figure out the how, the what, and the where. Right. But the first step in any of this is always understanding who is it that you want to serve? Who is it that can gain the most from you? Who is it that wishes they were where you are today, so that you could turn around and, bring them up and lift them up with you? And this messaging a lot of time goes into, we started off this podcast with clarity on this, but a lot of people dread the question of what do you do and how that fits into their messaging. And I'm curious, what are your thoughts on that little piece there?
On answering the question, what do you do, and how to navigate that?
Yeah.
I was at an event in Austin in May, and there was 150 people there. And inevitably, it was a few days, over the course of a few days, answering the question all day. What do you do? What do you do? What do you do? And at the start of the event, the first few people, I said some version of, I help Martians kidnap more people without getting spotted by NASA. And not that, but my version of that. Everyone has that. I help X do Y without the crappy thing. It's tried and true. Right. It's all over LinkedIn. And I was giving my version of that. Glossed eyes, glazes, no one cared. And I watched in all these other interactions too, people asked it because they felt they should. But when they got the answer, it was like lights out. So I reflected on what are the breaks. I was like, okay, what if instead I talk about when people start coaching businesses or in kind of consulting business where the work has real impact and meaning, they're normally doing it from the heart and because they care a whole lot. And those people aren't always good at getting the message out or doing enrollment to get clients. So I help those people. And I started saying some version of that. And I saw people like, oh, okay, they're resonating. They're interested in the conversation. Some people actually asked a follow-up question. They went further. And I was like, okay, that worked way better. What if I took it a step further?
Right.
And then the step further was telling some kind of a story. And you did a really good version of that when you shared yours here. And I shared a little bit of a story too, as far as sharing a story to how did you start doing this work? Why do you care about this work and what impact this has? And if you can weave it in a story, I don't think we need to spend time talking about why stories are impactful and effective and whatever. Yeah, but then you can weave it into a story. So that's what I would recommend.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic. I used to teach the idea of what I call a context pitch. I used to say, what do you do? Why should anybody care? Why it's unique, stuff like that. And today I break it down in a much more simplified manner, which is number one, what do you do, right? So I am a sales coach. I'll break it down based on what I said earlier. 2 is the story that brings out A, the relevancy to the person you're talking to, B, the pain they might be experiencing, and then C, the solution you bring. So that was when I spoke about my A was, 4.5+ years ago, I noticed X. Then those people that I noticed get stuck because of B, and these are the couple things they might be experiencing. And then C, this is where I stepped into it to give them the confidence and clarity to know the who, where, what, and whatever. And then the third step is going to be people that you've worked with, dropping names that people might be familiar with, because that will give you the ability to set that perception, which is the whole part of it. The whole point of this is giving people the perception you want them to have about you, because they've seen you around, they've heard about you, but do they have the perception you want them to have? And when you lay down who you've worked with, there's that, oh, they must really know what they're talking about if they've worked with that person. Obviously, it should be true. And then there's the impact and results, right? What have you done for people? Not just the data in terms of the raw, hey, they grew their business by X amount, but also how did that impact them is also extremely powerful. And it's so different than the way, like you said, that standard people say, I help A, do Y through C. And it's just so, nobody remembers that. One, because we remember stories because it does something to our synapses. And beyond that, we are able to actually pay attention to what they're saying because they're talking to us, as opposed to just saying some jargon that they were told they should say. And we're like, oh, okay.
Exactly. They just go and like, I think I put enough attention out. I'm going to check out. And I love it the way you walk through, because you also inevitably and intentionally baked in some social proof when you saying like, I help these people and some results. And that's why later when I talked about, I've worked with people in how many countries, I think I counted a few weeks ago, it's 313 people in 16 different countries.
Amazing.
And you find these stories to just start infusing them naturally in what you're talking about. And then that's when it's not sales. If you like the way you told that story, it felt natural. Like you're just telling a story to a friend versus it being a pitch.
Yeah. And it's a game changer when you're ready to, to change that up. One last question here, and then we'll open it up to Q&A. How do you define your dream clients?
I define my dream clients as people who are driven, people who are either creative, see themselves as creative or want to tap into their creativity more, are highly empathetic, have gone through difficult things, come out the other side of it, and either what they learned through that journey or clarity they got from going through that journey and now realize that they're meant to do more meaningful work, deeper work. These people have done a lot of work and reflection on themselves. Like they're already well along and they have all the ingredients and they just need my help and my guidance to help bring it all together. And they feel that they have a message to share. They know that they are here to share a message that makes an impact and makes a difference.
Amazing. Beautiful. So we're going to open the floor to Q&A. You can put in there as well, what are you stuck on today? If you could ask one question on, let's say, the topic we had today, or really anything, what would that be? And while we're waiting for people to put that into the comments, how has your own dream client changed over the years, if you don't mind me asking, Rob?
It's funny because it evolves so organically. So I shared a little bit earlier that I used to be head of people and culture. My favorite part of that role was coaching the CEO and the leadership team, and that was cool. And on the side, some of my first clients were creative people. And that was
Mm-hmm.
because my background in music, I used to be a DJ, run a record label. And so those are people that I had in my orbit. Those are people that I knew. Those are people that I could relate to. So those are some of my first coaching clients. Then I started posting and sharing mostly on Instagram at the time about habits, about how it's changing my life. And I wasn't saying like, hey, I'm going to help you with habits. I was just saying, this is what's happening. This is what I'm doing. I'm tracking my habits. This is how it's impacting me. And people started asking for it. So I called myself a habits coach then. And how I defined the people would probably be, as far as like values and alignment, the way I just explained it would be very similar. And then I didn't intend to work with entrepreneurs. It was 11 of my first 12 clients when I was bold enough to say, I'm quitting my 6-figure job and I'm leaving this director level role to go all in on this coaching thing. 11 of those 12 clients were entrepreneurs. And I was like, why is that? Oh, wait a minute. They are creative. They are going to the beat of their own drum. They like solving interesting problems. Like, these are my folks. And so it's just been like all of that and I already finished the story as far as like how I ended up working with the people I am now. But the values piece of it, like, so now it's coaches and consultants, and now it's people who they know they're damn good at what they do. They care deeply about the people that they serve. They've got clients' results to show for it, and they're just not sure about the next step. Am I launching a group program? Am I writing a book? Should I start a community? I'm doing some things, but I think it could be better. Like, I know my messaging, like they know there's like a next step to what they're doing. So that piece has changed, but the values piece, the care about the world, the empathetic, the driven, have done a bunch of self-work, that's been consistent through all my evolutions.
Amazing. So we do have one question here, which is, this conversation apparently impacted this person in a big way. And they understand, first they have to figure out the who it is that they want to work with. How do they go about doing that? They're kind of stuck on that point.
It's about being willing to sit and answer a bunch of questions. So, okay, I'll go through the Venn diagram earlier, but I won't mess it up this time. So we're going through the things who you're relevant to. So it's doing an audit, like, where have you worked? What industries? What have you done? What accomplishments, results have you created in your own life? What are things that friends and family and coworkers have frequently asked you for assistance and guidance on? You do a search and audit through that, and you'll start to see some patterns, some things that come up. Okay, then you do a real, like, what are the work you enjoy doing? If $100 million landed in your bank account tomorrow, and the only thing is you need to continue doing something, what the heck is it that you're doing? Or on the flip side, if that doesn't work, because sometimes both together are really powerful. If you found out next week that you have 5 years to live, what would you do with the remaining of your time? Assuming that, well, after the grieving period, after whatever, but you're still going to have to do something for 4.5 years, or what would you spend your time doing? So again, finding the things that bring you joy, light you up, fill you up. And then the last one, as far as like, is there a demand for it? It's some market analysis. And if people are asking you for something, then the market is already giving you indication. It might mean putting out some surveys. It might mean interviewing people. It might be speaking to folks, but it doesn't matter how much you enjoy it and how much experience you have there. If no one wants it, like we live somewhere where it gets really cold in the winter, and I'm just not going to sell ice creams in the middle of January here. It's not going to happen. But right now it's July and it's really damn hot. And if I went out there with yummy ice creams at the right intersection, we could unload them. And my dad used to sell ice creams out of ice cream bikes. So my dad was an entrepreneur, and I saw that as a kid, and I saw the difference of season and location. So that's what I would say to someone who's trying to figure out the who.
Absolutely love it. I always like to point out at the end of these live podcasts that I have a page of notes today. And if I were to try to go and implement everything that I have here, I'm not going to get anywhere. So if you have things that you took away from today, please take just that one thing that you're going to put into implementation first and move your way through that process slowly. Don't try to do it all at once, please. Robb, you mentioned right before we jumped on that you had an offer for everybody who's here today or listening. Tell us a little bit about that.
It's funny because I don't even want to call it an offer. I have an invitation. And the reason why I call it an invitation is you can go check it out, see if you feel it's valuable, explore it, get so much value before even deciding if you want to trust me with your email address. And every week I publish a newsletter called The Weekly Growth Habit, where I give really practical skills and tips on how you can grow your impact, grow your business, and attract more dream clients. And the feedback that I get consistently from people whenever I leave the house and go to an event, and I actually got an email from someone today, and she said, I read your newsletter every single week, every single word. And then she said, not Justin Welsh's, I read yours every week, which I was like, well, I wasn't expecting that. I wasn't fishing for that, but thank you for saying that. So I put a lot of thought and effort into it. There's over 100 issues. And if you go on my website, on my blog, all the back issues are there. Like, go check it out. Go read a bunch. Go see it. Does it stand up to what I just said? I just told you it's valuable and full of practical stuff. Go check it out. I feel confident that it is. I really do stand behind that it can help you. And if you feel the same way, then put in your email address and it'll show up in your inbox every Saturday morning.
Love that. And that is very powerful right there. An amazing offer. Myself, I also have an invitation to everyone here today. I don't know if I'll keep that moving forward, but at least for today. If you love what we did today, I mean, a lot of times on the live podcast, we're talking about things that are timely, interesting, that you can add to your skill set toolbox. If you loved what we did here today, or if you have any questions about pretty much anything around sales or things in general, you can feel free to hit me up. My contact information is here in the chat. It'll of course be in the description as well of the episode. Free 30-minute strategy call. Happy to spend time in it. There's no strings attached. They do get grabbed up pretty quickly. I think we're almost booked out for already 2 weeks in advance now. So grab them. They move fast. And I really appreciate everybody being here today. Robb, you've been absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for coming on. This has been a blast. And really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate you. It felt free flowing. I felt like I was hanging out with a friend. So thank you, and thank everyone.
That is one of the biggest compliments I think I've ever gotten. I appreciate everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. And until next week, have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.